Epictetus on freedom, why you're more free than you think. Hook, 30 seconds. Picture this. A man with shackles around his ankles, property of the Roman Empire, being beaten by his master. His leg is being twisted until it snaps. And in that moment of agony, he calmly tells his torturer, "You're going to break it." When the bone finally fractures, he simply says, "See? I told you." This wasn't resignation. This wasn't defeat. This was the most radical act of freedom in human history. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. Chapter 1. The Setup. Chapter: The Slave Who Became Free. The year is 90 AD. Rome is at the height of its power, controlling most of the known world. In the bustling streets of Nicopolis, crowds gather around a simple stone platform. But they're not here for entertainment. They're here to listen to a man who understands freedom better than anyone who's ever lived. His name is Epictetus, and he's about to turn everything you think you know about liberty upside down. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. Epictetus spent most of his life as a slave. He was born into bondage, beaten regularly, permanently disabled by his master's cruelty. By every measure of ancient Roman society, and frankly, by most measures today, he was the least free person imaginable. So how did this broken, enslaved man become one of history's greatest teachers of freedom? How did someone who couldn't even choose where to sleep or what to eat discover a form of liberty so powerful that Roman emperors would later study his teachings? Open loop. The answer will challenge everything you believe about what it means to be free. What Epictetus understood, and what we've completely lost sight of in our modern world, is that there are actually two kinds of freedom. The first kind is what everyone chases: external freedom. The freedom to do what you want, buy what you want, go where you want. But there's a second type of freedom that's infinitely more powerful. A freedom that no government can regulate, no boss can control, no circumstance can destroy. And once you understand this second type of freedom, you'll realize something shocking. You might be more free right now than 99% of people who ever lived. CTA moment, value-based. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I did when I first discovered it, you're going to want to stick around because we're just getting started. Chapter 2. The Deeper Truth. Chapter: The Prison of Your Own Making. Let me share with you the moment Epictetus's worldview crystallized. Picture him in that slave quarters, leg throbbing from his master's violence, surrounded by other enslaved people complaining about their fate. And suddenly this profound realization hits him. He would later teach, "No one can harm you without your permission." Wait, read that again. A slave, a man who could be beaten, sold, or killed at any moment, is telling us that no one can harm us without our permission? Your first reaction might be, "That's absurd. Of course people can harm me. They can fire me, betray me, steal from me, hurt the people I love." And you'd be right about the external harm. But Epictetus wasn't talking about your body or your possessions. He was talking about something far more important: your inner freedom. Here's what he discovered lying on that cold stone floor. His master could control his body, but he couldn't control Epictetus's thoughts, judgments, or responses. His master could break his leg, but he couldn't break his spirit unless Epictetus gave him permission. Think about your own life for a moment. When someone cuts you off in traffic, who makes you angry? When your boss criticizes your work, who makes you feel worthless? When someone posts something offensive on social media, who makes you outraged? We say they made me angry or they hurt my feelings. But Epictetus would challenge that completely. He'd say, they did something. You chose anger. You chose hurt feelings. You gave them permission to disturb your peace. This isn't victim blaming or toxic positivity. This is recognizing the one arena where you have complete sovereignty, your internal response to external events. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, who would later become a devoted student of Stoic philosophy, wrote in his personal journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." An emperor, someone with more external freedom than almost anyone in history, was reminding himself of the same truth a former slave had discovered. But here's where this gets really interesting for your daily life. We live in what might be the most externally free society in human history. You can choose your career, your relationships, where to live, what to believe, yet rates of anxiety, depression, and general life dissatisfaction are skyrocketing. How is that possible? Open loop, but there's something even more shocking about how we've imprisoned ourselves. Chapter 3. The Transformation. Chapter: The Dichotomy That Changes Everything. Epictetus gave his students a framework that was so simple yet so revolutionary that it became the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. He called it the fundamental rule of life. Some things are within our power, while others are not. That's it. That's the entire foundation. But don't let the simplicity fool you. This concept is about to transform how you see everything. Within your power, your thoughts, your judgments, your decisions, your responses, your effort, your character. Outside your power, other people's actions, the weather, the economy, the past, the future, other people's opinions of you, the results of your efforts. Here's the life-changing part. We spend 90% of our mental energy trying to control things outside our power, and maybe 10% actually working on what we can control. We worry about whether people like us instead of focusing on being likable. We stress about whether our business will succeed instead of focusing on doing excellent work. We argue with people about their political opinions instead of examining our own principles. Epictetus would watch his students make these mistakes and say, "It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Think you know what freedom is? Think you understand what's making you unhappy? Think again. Let me tell you about Sarah, a client of mine who discovered this principle the hard way. She was a successful marketing executive, six-figure salary, corner office, seemingly everything she wanted. But she was miserable, constantly anxious about her boss's approval, stressed about her team's performance, losing sleep over industry changes she couldn't predict. When I introduced her to Epictetus's dichotomy, her first reaction was resistance. But I can influence my team's performance. I can't just ignore what my boss thinks. And she was partially right, but she was missing the crucial distinction. She couldn't control her team's performance, but she could control her leadership, her communication, her example. She couldn't control her boss's opinion, but she could control the quality of her work and how she presented it. The shift was dramatic. Instead of lying awake worrying about quarterly projections, she focused on daily actions. Instead of trying to manage her team's motivation, she focused on being the kind of leader that naturally inspired people. Instead of seeking her boss's approval, she focused on doing work she could be proud of. 6 months later, she got promoted. But more importantly, she was sleeping better than she had in years. This is what Epictetus meant when he taught, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants." He wasn't promoting poverty. He was promoting the ultimate luxury, not needing things outside your control to be happy. CTA moment, transformation-based. If this is resonating with you, if you're starting to see your own life differently, stay with me, because this is where it gets really interesting. Chapter 4. The Revelation. Chapter: The Freedom You Already Have. Now here's the revelation that will blow your mind. You're already practicing this philosophy, but only in areas where you've accepted reality. You don't get angry at gravity for making things fall down. You don't feel personally offended when it rains on your picnic. You don't lose sleep worrying about whether the sun will rise tomorrow. Why? Because you've accepted these things as outside your control. But somehow, when it comes to other people's behavior, economic conditions, or social media algorithms, we act like we should be able to control them. We get frustrated when they don't work the way we think they should. Epictetus saw this clearly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Every single day you demonstrate incredible mental freedom in some areas, while imprisoning yourself in others. You're simultaneously the freest and most enslaved person you know. Let me show you just how free you actually are. Right now, as you're listening to this, you have the freedom to pay attention or let your mind wander. You have the freedom to agree with what I'm saying or reject it completely. You have the freedom to feel inspired or feel skeptical. You have the freedom to take notes or forget everything in 5 minutes. Those might seem like small freedoms, but they're actually the most important freedoms you'll ever have. They're the building blocks of every other freedom in your life. When you truly understand that your thoughts, judgments, and responses are completely within your power, something extraordinary happens. External circumstances lose their ability to disturb your peace. Other people's behavior becomes interesting rather than infuriating. Setbacks become data rather than disasters. This is what Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, meant when he wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you stop trying to control what you can't control, you finally have energy to actually control what you can. But here's the most profound part. Once you stop demanding that the world conform to your preferences, you start seeing opportunities everywhere. When you're not wasting mental energy being upset about traffic, you notice the podcast that teaches you something valuable. When you're not stressed about your coworker's attitude, you focus on your own excellence and get noticed by management. The ultimate irony of freedom is this. The moment you stop trying to control everything, you gain more actual influence than you ever thought possible. This is why Epictetus, a former slave, could stand in front of the most powerful people in the Roman Empire and teach them about freedom. He had discovered something they were all searching for, but looking in the wrong places. Closing the challenge. Chapter. Your freedom starts now. So here's your challenge, and it's going to be harder than you think. For the next 7 days, I want you to catch yourself every time you try to control something outside your power. Every time you feel frustrated with traffic, anxious about someone else's opinion, or stressed about things you can't predict. And when you catch yourself, ask, what can I actually control in this situation? Maybe you can't control the traffic, but you can control your podcast playlist, your breathing, or your decision to leave earlier next time. Maybe you can't control your boss's mood, but you can control the quality of your work and how you present it. Maybe you can't control the economy, but you can control your skills, your network, and your savings rate. This isn't about becoming passive or accepting injustice. Epictetus himself fought against slavery through his teachings. Marcus Aurelius used these principles to govern an empire. This is about focusing your limited energy on where you can actually make a difference. Ancient wisdom isn't ancient because it's old. It's ancient because it survived thousands of years of testing. Stoic philosophy has guided everyone from slaves to emperors, from prisoners of war to presidents, because it works. It works when you have nothing, and it works when you have everything. Modern Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or accepting mediocrity. It's about the ultimate self-improvement, becoming truly free. CTA moment, challenge-based. If you're ready to discover just how free you really are, if you want more ancient wisdom that actually works in the modern world, then you need to subscribe to this channel. Because we're just getting started on this journey, and trust me, where we're going next will challenge everything you think you know about success, happiness, and what it means to live a good life. Your freedom doesn't start when your circumstances change. It starts the moment you realize you've had it all along. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Nish word count on 2 to 847.